full kit and armor. The Persians were puzzled. From their ranks, all they could see was a long line of Greeks running down on them. Surely they would be out of breath before they even got close enough to fight. These Persian infantrymen were more skirmisher troops than heavy infantry. Lightly armed with short spears and scimitars, they formed ranks as a line of steel-tipped spears came hurtling towards them. The two armies clashed head-on. The Persians soon realized their weapons were hopeless against the Greek army, but they fought back valiantly, and by sheer weight of numbers began pushing the Greek center back. It looked like Miltiades' gamble had failed, and all the while Datis was sailing closer to Athens. It is 490 BC. The Greek army is being pushed back by Persian invaders, and a Persian fleet is on its way to attack Athens. As the Greeks fell back in the center, the Persian commander, Artaphernes, smelled victory.
The way in which Miltiades drew out the Athenian army, enormously lengthening and thinning his center, was one of the riskiest things, I think, in all of ancient warfare.
But now the strong Greek phalanxes on the wings beat back the thinner Persian line and began to push in towards the center. Each phalanx moved on command as one unit, wheeling left or right, almost turning on a dime. Miltiades' gamble had paid off. As the center fell back, his wings slowly encircled the enemy. The slaughter began in earnest as the heavily armored Greeks hammered into the Persian divisions.
And then that whole center of the Persian army became essentially a killing zone.
Certainly, to fight that way took great strength and great endurance, and you haven't even talked about the heat of the summer.
The Persians continued to throw themselves onto the attacking phalanx, desperately trying to find a way to break it. In the meantime, the Persian archers poured thousands of arrows into the Greek lines, now so closely packed with the Persian infantry that they were bound to hit their own soldiers. The Greeks felt that right and might were on their side and fought like men possessed.
Tactics were not so important in those days. It was more just the guts to stand next shoulder to shoulder with your mates and carry on the fight.
The Persians were a broken force. They had never been defeated by the Greeks. But now thousands of their soldiers lay dead or died. Suddenly the Persians broke and ran for their ships, desperate to escape the slaughter. The Greeks raced to cut off their retreat and chase them to the water's edge. There was chaos on the beach, the stampeding troops pushing and heaving to get their craft away, while trying to defend themselves from the pursuing hoplites. The surviving Persians sailed away, while the Greeks collapsed, exhausted in the sand. But there was no time to rest. While the battle was raging at Marathon, Datis and his Persian troops were sailing closer to Athens. Miltiades ordered his tired and battle-weary troops to Athens, a forced march of 22 miles in full armor. It had taken him just over 3 hours to defeat the Persian army at Marathon, but that meant that Datis was 3 hours closer to Athens. It was a race against time. He sent a runner on ahead with news of victory. According to legend, it was Phidippides, the same man who had run to Sparta. He ran the 22 miles here to Athens and shouted, "Rejoice, we have victory," then fell dead from exhaustion. Miltiades arrived in the nick of time and managed to set his troops up around Athens. Datis was dismayed when he sailed around the bay and found the Greek army waiting for him.
When they saw those Athenians waiting for them, they just didn't have the heart to have another go at these guys who had just inflicted this disastrous defeat on them.
He could not even land his army. He thought these troops had been beaten at Marathon, but now here they were, ready to fight again. Acknowledging defeat, he turned his ships around and set a course for Persia. Hippias had guessed right. Not only had he lost his tooth, but any chance of ever regaining his kingdom. And the Spartans? They turned up late and missed out on the glory, but were curious to see what a Persian soldier looked like. They marched on from Athens to inspect the dead.
They say that the Spartans were sort of like sightseers, toured the battle afterwards, and that they were pretty shaken up to see what great work their rival Athenians had done. I think it really did eat at the Spartans' guts, that these foppish Athenians had polished off the Persians.
If the Persians had won the battle and had occupied Athens, they would then have had a basis in mainland Greece for further campaigns, and that might well have changed the course of history.
The Marathon was a true battle, a real battle that was decisive and that threw back an invading enemy.
The fame of Marathon is, in my view, imperishable. It was an extraordinary victory. But for Marathon, you wouldn't then have had the ensuing civilization of the Greeks.
The Persians had lost 6,500 men. The Greeks, 192. This was a great victory for Greece, but an even greater victory for Athens. In the space of 20 years, its citizens had got rid of their king and pushed back the Persian Empire. In the process, they had created a new form of government. They called it democratia. We call it democracy. And Phidippides, his run is remembered at every Olympics, and each year in cities around the world when ordinary people run the marathon.